Thank you for joining us for 3Bs on the Law podcast, hosted by Trisha Barita, Camille Canali, and Susan Dawson. Disclaimer, this podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only, not meant to provide legal advice, and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Also remember, laws change or they differ by jurisdiction, so this is not a substitute for seeking legal counsel in your jurisdiction on the current law applicable to you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 3Bs on the Law. We have a very, very special guest today coming to talk to us about tips for operating a remote workforce. So I'm so excited to introduce you to one of my dearest friends, Diana Dibble. Diana, I'm so excited to have you here. Tell us about your business. Tell us about all about your company.
So my company is Design to Delivery. My business partner, Molly Gimmel, and I started it September 10th, 2001. So we're coming up on 20 years.
Wow.
We support federal government agencies, primarily defense departments, working in their acquisitions offices, providing contract support, administrative support, budget, finance, those kind of things. So that's what we do.
Well, and you have remote workers all over the place, right? You're in what, 5 or 6 states?
Yeah,
Something
six.
like
I think 6 states.
6?
I lose count until we have to do the taxes. Then I know how many states we're in.
Right, but you maintain 2 primary offices in 2 states, right? And then you have remote workers located in other states as well. So even before the shutdown, you had some workers in the office and some remote workers. So you are really the experts on kind of running that remote workplace, right? So
Yeah.
Tell us what is kind of one of the key tips that you think of when you think about how to really operate a remote workplace well. What kind of comes to the top of your mind?
I think the biggest thing is communication, because when you're in an office, you have the ability to go down the hall, or phones are there or whatever. So a lot of times employees' productivity suffers because there's not enough communication. We found using things like Teams for our corporate office has actually helped everybody stay in touch, or using Zoom. But really, communication is key, because that way the employees understand what is expected of them, and they feel connected. Because sometimes when you're working remotely, you don't feel connected. You don't feel part of something. So things like I said, the communications through Teams, Zoom, but also you can use employee newsletters as a way to keep people in touch. When COVID first started, we have a monthly newsletter. We decided to do this thing that we called the Corona Connection. So we sent out pictures, and we did pictures of the corporate staff wearing, like, what's your favorite shoe? What's your favorite hat? What's your favorite color? And we were getting employees to also send in pictures. So even though we're so spread out, it was a way to kind of bind everybody together and make them feel like, they weren't so alone in this, because it's not just the remote teleworking. We also had a pandemic that had shut down a lot of the states, so people couldn't even go anywhere. So they were kind of like in their house and feeling really separated from everything.
And so, Diana, I know one of the things we were talking about before we started recording today is that not everybody works well remotely.
Mm-hmm.
And you had some really great suggestions on how to get those people engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And I was hoping maybe you'd go over them again for us.
Sure. So, understanding, just like people have different styles of learning, people have different styles of working. So it's important that your program managers or your supervisors are kind of like staying in touch and staying on top of how people are performing. And you can see where people are struggling, because, sometimes you may have an employee who's been really, really productive, and all of a sudden you see it slipping. So one of the ways to do that is by reaching out, making suggestions that they take time off. When you're teleworking, sometimes those boundaries between work life and home life start to blur. And, people get really stressed out. So one of the things we did was in our Indiana office, and we also offered it to people in our corporate office, was, do you need to come in? Do you need to have a place to kind of get away from home? And then on top of it, you have some people who live in areas where broadband is not as accessible, or it's kind of spotty. So we wanted to make it available to people to come in and work, but it's really staying in tune to your employees and having real conversations of, are you okay? What do you need that we can help with? One of the things we offer to our staff is an employee assistance program, the EAP. We pay 100% the cost for it. So, we looked into ways of disseminating it without people feeling like they were being put on. But really, your supervisors are your front line in terms of doing check-ins. So again, that's that communication piece. But if you're really paying attention, you'll be able to see when work starts slipping, deadlines start slipping, and having conversations early on to address it will allow you to fix a situation before it gets to the point where you're having to look at maybe terminating somebody's job for performance.
That's a great point, actually.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're in multiple states. I want to know what that was like during the pandemic, and just currently, like, how do you handle, the differences in those states? Because obviously work laws have been different related to COVID for sure. Each state's handle them differently. These ladies are always joking with me about my state, Texas, and they've made a couple, splashes in the news here and there. My governor, obviously, Abbott is not afraid of the press. And although, I'm always trying to tease Camille too. LA's no joke as well. But what about that, Diana? Do you have any thoughts about especially for employers or businesses that are looking at trying to move from, maybe they're only in one state, like they're in Texas, but they're thinking, I want to expand out. How much of a headache is that to go into other states? Do you recall when you did that, or what that's like, or any experiences you want to share?
So there was one point in our business where I think we were in 9 states at the same time. And one of the things that we did was, prior to expanding into a state, we did research on the employment laws. It's very important to understand what that means for a business. What are the costs associated with that? And a lot of times people will look at, oh, well, I have some people, I'll be able to expand, but you have to be able to cover those costs. And sometimes it's getting another accountant. We had looked into doing business in California, and one of the things we found out was we were going to need to get another attorney. Well, trust me, ask Molly about me in California, because I told her I would quit if she tried to do business in California.
Sorry, Mel.
I mean, no offense, but you guys have a lot of laws.
Don't worry, Diana. Don't you apologize. She's used to it. She's used to it.
But
a lot of laws.
I mean, a whole lot of laws, but it's not just the employment laws. It's looking at, do you need to get another accountant? And for instance, when we started and expanded into Arizona, what we had to look at was changing our pay schedule, because they have a law in terms of when people have to be paid after a pay period. So at one point we were running 4 payrolls a month, because we had 2 different pay periods. We had the 1st through the 15th, 15th through the 16th through the end of the month, and then the 7th through the 22nd, and the 23rd through the 6th, or whatever it was. So we were trying to keep track of all of this stuff. And finally I got smart and said, let's just change everybody, and we'll pay everybody, within 10 days. But those are the kind of things that you have to know and understand before you move into a new state. So when we're looking at expanding, first thing I do is, what are the employment laws? I always reach out to my employment attorney. Anybody who's looking to go into a new state, Yes, there's information you can get on your own, but if you reach out to your employment attorney, they can tell you what that means. So I always call up our attorney saying, we're thinking about expanding into X state. This is what I found. What else can you tell me? What else do I need to know? Because if you're going to get into a state, you need to understand what that means. Example, Hawaii. We had to open Hawaii. One of our employees was moving. Our customer loved them. Well, I found out about Hawaii's excise tax that we have to pay every month. So, so the bottom line is that reach out to people, your accountant, your attorney, talk to them about what all of this means. What does it do in terms of your accounting system, your taxes, whatever it may be. But where people really, really get tripped up is on the employment laws.
Yeah,
I love that, being educated but don't just guess and just go, I can go there market wise.
And then figure out later.
Yeah.
That's okay when you're going to a new restaurant and you don't really know about the food. And, but I treat it like I have food allergy. So I need to know what they're serving because I don't want to have an allergic reaction. It's the same thing with going into a new state. I don't want anything that's going to cause me agita. So,
that's a great way to put it. I've never thought about it that way, but that's a really great analysis or way to lay that out. One thing I wanted to get to, and then I know we were going to get to our showdown question, which hopefully Camille's got our answers ready, but is when we're talking about employment laws in all these different states and laws change, of all of the laws, the ones that change the most frequently are employment laws, and they change in different states. But then you have one or two, or I don't know how many employee handbooks you have, but you had a really interesting way of maintaining your employee handbook so that it's accessible, but it can be easily changed. So can you share a little bit about that and the tools that you use for that?
So when we first started, I had done employee handbooks for previous clients before I had this business. And so we had a baseline and I kept taking stuff out and I started noticing I kept having to update because we were growing into different states and on and on. So what I did was I broke all of the policies out into individual documents and I update those as needed, putting revision information in the footer. And then I keep them on Basecamp because we have people in so many states. We want to have a place where they can access things. They can access the labor law posters. They can do their if they need to update their W-4, whatever it may be, it's all on Basecamp. And then when we make the update, we send it out to everybody's work email address and personal email address to ensure delivery. And on some of the really, really important ones, they will have acknowledgement forms in there that they have to sign and date. And one of the things I make sure that they do is that they physically sign, that they're not using digital signatures. Part of the reason is most of my employees use government laptops. So their digital signatures is them for the government. So to ensure compliance, in case something were to happen, I make sure that they either physically sign it, or in some cases, when we were really in lockdown, we sent it out by Adobe Sign to their personal email addresses. So we would have a verified digital signature with something that was legal. But it's so much easier to update individual policies. And ours are pretty detailed. It's not just the policy from a high level, it's the how-to. So our work schedules, what does it mean if they don't follow the policy? Like we have in there that it could be escalating disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment. Where I find when I consult with other companies, where I find exposure is that their policies are way too general and they don't explain what the consequences are for not following it. And where I learned this early on was when we had an unemployment claim and the person hadn't been following the policy. And they said, where's your policy? My response, it's right here.
Right.
People need, if you're going to have an action to be defendable, you have to have a document that's written in such a way. Now, I have a lot of experience in HR. I've been in HR since 93, I think it was. For people who don't, anybody out there who's a business and you don't have this experience, you've got 3 ladies on here who are experts in HR law. And anyone who says, well, it's really expensive, it is less expensive to do it right up front than it is to defend it later on. So my advice to people is you need to have your policies written down however you do it. If it's one handbook or it's individual policies like I do, but that's where most of the exposures comes with businesses is in this area. And especially if you're using 1099s, you need to talk to an employment attorney to make sure your 1099 is done in such a way that it's defendable to the Department of Labor and to the IRS. And then you need to make sure that you understand as a business owner what it means to use a 1099 employee. If you have a 1099 and you're telling them when they have to be at work, you're providing everything and on, you have an employee. And then you need to talk to your accountant about how to pay payroll taxes.
Yes, thank you. I was going to say, that 1099 is what gives me indigestion, Diana, here in California.
I was going to say, she used your favorite word, Camille, document, but she only used it once. So, Camille, you need to say it for us. Say it for us. Ready?
Document. But, we really don't have, except for very, very slim circumstances, independent contractors here in California anymore. They have
I know. I've been following
one of our lovely laws that I know Diane is very fond of.
And let me tell you, I went to SHRM. We were looking at some stuff. I go to a lot of the SHRM conferences and you can get some really good information. And I talked to an employment attorney from California. I said, look, my business partner's been talking about this. I'm not a fan. What's your opinion? He goes, don't do it. Don't do it.
It's not just us.
It's really, the thing is, if you're in California and you are a business, learn everything you need to know and make sure you have really, really good resources.
Yeah.
Because missteps are very, very expensive. And I keep telling everybody, in my business, if you don't know what you're doing and you misstep, it can result in things that can include jail time.
Yes.
But missteps in other industries, I literally have watched people and you tell them, don't do this. It's going to cost you money. You need to do X. And they do it. And then $100,000 later, and they're like, well, you said, and I should have listened to you. I'm like, yeah, you really should have, because people get into business and they don't understand the nuances, and that's fine. You need to know what you do as a business, but that's why you need to have good resources. Your accountant, your banker, your attorney, your employment attorney, if you have employees, or if you're thinking about getting employees. And as Sue and I were talking over the weekend, your insurance broker, to make sure that your company is covered, errors and admissions, workers' comp, whatever it may be. But, people need to do your homework. Sometimes you take the leap and start the business. Great. But while you're learning how to do the particulars, make sure you have good people. I had really good people. And now my calls to my employment attorney are, hey, I'm thinking about this. I just want to run it by you. And she's usually like, yep. But there was one I ran past her and she's like, nope. So, I have her on speed dial. She and I talk at 10 o'clock at night sometimes because she makes herself available and she's awesome. But, people
she's
need
not one
to,
of the 3 of us, just to be clear. She's
not
advertising for us. Yeah.
I called earlier. You owe me a phone too.
I know we could talk and talk and talk. I know you and I, Diana, could talk and talk and talk. And so we're going to definitely have you back on to get another podcast to dig into more stuff. But in the meantime, before we let you go, we have our fun 3B showdown, which we started in our first season because we thought it was going to be over quick. And now we're just, we're starting season 3 now, and it's still going on. So, Camille, take it away.
So today's question is, you have 3 choices of cake. So chocolate cake with vanilla cream frosting, carrot cake, or cheesecake, which I
the first one. First one.
Awesome.
You don't even have to.
We love you.
First
I knew
one.
I liked you, Diana. That's mine. I was going to say, I don't think cheesecake is really a cake, but that's okay.
No, I mean, I love cheesecake, but growing up, I would always ask for either a chocolate cake with vanilla icing or white icing for my birthday, or chocolate with chocolate. And my mother would always get vanilla with vanilla because the guests like that better. And I'm like, but it's my birthday.
It's my birthday, yeah. No,
It's
I
my
said carrot
birthday.
cake. You put cream cheese icing on anything and I'll eat it.
I'll eat the cream cheese icing
Yeah.
off and leave the cake.
All right. Well, we are running out of time. In fact, we could talk forever, I know. But Diana, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us and giving everyone advice on remote employees. And thanks to everyone for joining us on 3Bs on the Law.
Thank you for joining us on today's podcast of 3Bs on the Law. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast. We also welcome any comments. If you'd like to get in touch with us or suggest a future topic, you can email us at 3THREEBsonthelaw@gmail.com. And because we're lawyers, we need to remind you that this podcast is not meant to provide you with legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.